Join us as we examine the unknown, forgotten, and ultimately unproduced sci-fi and fantasy series of the legendary Irwin Allen. I'm Captain Kirk, longtime passionate collector of old school sci-fi. Join me as we explore classic props and the tales they tell in the Prop Gallery. Tonight's viewing is a rarity for Prop Gallery, pre-production art of a dream that never was. A rare glimpse into a parallel reality that might have been, of sci-fi and fantasy TV shows conceived, but ultimately abandoned.
Now other dreams are being born.
But they all had one thing in common: the master of disaster, Irwin Allen.
Here the visualizations by talented artists and craftsmen
turn into breathtaking reality.
And some of them, some part of them, have finally found a home in the Prop Gallery.
And this is Hollywood's master magician.
How to describe Irwin Allen?
Hello.
Well, that's a whole show in itself.
Here I am up on the screen. But believe it or not, I'm also down there in the audience with you.
But the thumbnail version.
Irwin Allen, up on your feet. Take a bow.
Irwin Allen came from the poor side of New York.
Margaret, call a production meeting. Full staff, please.
Yes, sir, right away.
And through grit, determination, and a workaholic till you drop dead attitude, made it to the top of Hollywood.
Those that are going to get killed, raise your hand.
And he stayed there for years, 5.5 years to be exact. The dates between the release of the giant mega hit, The Poseidon Adventure, and giant stink bomb, The Swarm.
A moving black mass.
When are we going to stop this massacre?
The Swarm.
But we're interested in Irwin's television output, specifically his sci-fi and fantasy series that didn't fly. Why? Oh, a lot of reasons. Full disclosure, in 2023, the Irwin Allen TV archives exploded onto the auction scene, with items available that collectors had never seen before. And full disclosure, I'm a huge Irwin Allen fan, so this is great fun. Shall we dive in? In the early 1960s, Irwin's first TV pitch was something unexpected: the tales of Edgar Allan Poe. Perhaps inspired by the Roger Corman, Vincent Price cycle that was raking in the money. However, it was not, as you might expect, an anthology series like Twilight Zone or Thriller. But in Irwin's version, good old Edgar is a detective solving spooky psychic mysteries. Honestly, it's either total crap or totally ahead of its time. But it didn't sell. Next was a version of Journey to the Center of the Earth, also inspired by a recent hit movie.
Went where no human being had ever set foot.
The classic James Mason film also provided a lot of good stock footage, something Irwin Allen was becoming a master at using. Bottom line, though, it didn't sell. Somewhere in here, Irwin developed a series called The Mystery of Space. The pitch book contains a series of teasing images detailing the history of flight, but not much else. I wonder why nobody picked that up. Ditto to his anthology concept called Tales of Tomorrow. Not to be confused with the sci-fi anthology from the early 50s.
Tales of Tomorrow.
Which is excellent, by the way, if you can deal with early, creaky live TV. But not much is known about Irwin's project beyond these fantastic images. Irwin liked to keep his staff busy, so if there was any downtime, he liked to have his art staff work up some of the dreams that he had in his head. Then, Irwin decided to pitch his successful 1961 feature film, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and it hit big time.
Welcome aboard the Seaview, gentlemen.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Voyage was the first hour-long sci-fi series on American television with continuing characters.
Oh, come in, Lee.
About the adventures of the near-future, glass-nosed Seaview submarine and its crew.
If the men discover even the slightest hint of the calamity threatening their families, this sub will be a floating pressure cooker.
Led by Richard Basehart as Admiral Nelson and David Hedison as Captain Crane. And almost immediately after the sale of Voyage, Irwin pulled this out of his sleeve, or his own back catalog at least. It didn't sell. Why? 3 weeks before Voyage's 7th episode, Turn Back the Clock, premiered, The Lost World aired across the United States. Both starred David Hedison. Unfortunately for Irwin, lots of folks who watched Voyage watched The Lost World and noticed the blatant, you get it, and then they wrote about it, pissed off, to newspaper entertainment supplements all across the U.S. Needless to say, The Lost World became lost, at least until somebody else did it in the late 90s. But Irwin was just getting rolling. Next, there was The Lost Island.
We just got dropped out of the world. None of us is going anywhere.
Which looked like a cross between Rod Serling's The New People and the early 2000 hit Lost. Basically, plane crash survivors get caught between rival tribes in the Bermuda Triangle, an early pop culture reference to that little mystery. But there was also an early robot sitcom called How to Make a Man. It didn't sell. What did sell was... Lost in Space was the second hour-long sci-fi series with continuing characters, about the adventures of the space family Robinson, their sardonic robot,
Legend, a romantic story which is usually not true.
You pot-bellied pumpkin.
and the nefarious stowaway, Dr. Zachary Smith.
I have plotted their end as they plotted mine.
As is pretty well known now, Lost in Space was originally Space Family Robinson, but that was already a comic book. So Lost in Space was born. In its original pilot, there was no robot and no Dr. Smith.
Destroy everyone.
The interesting thing for our purpose here
Olé!
is the conjecture of what a Lost in Space series would have been like without the dramatic cast additions. We have a clue in the very last scene of the original pilot and a script outline for an unmade episode. Here, in the original pilot, No Place to Hide, we see two aliens spying on our space family. According to Mark Cushman in his excellent work, Lost in Space Volume 1, as originally conceived, the big-headed aliens and the Cyclops giants were enemies. In what was meant to be the 6th episode of the series, it looked like Lost in Space was going to go in a very different direction. The story was titled Refuge of the Damned. Apparently, in the distant past, the giant Cyclopses destroyed the advanced alien civilization on the surface, forcing the aliens to live underground. But already 5 episodes into the series,
Stop nibbling at me.
it was very clear it was going to go in a completely different direction.
A life for a life.
So the serialized concept was scuppered. These hieroglyphics are all that remains of that concept. Truly a lost world. But Irwin wasn't done.
When you enter the time tunnel, almost anything can happen. The Time Tunnel, in color on ABC.
His next project, The Time Tunnel, made it to series in 1966.
Deep in an underground labyrinth is a fantastic invention which cost billions of dollars, the Time Tunnel.
The Time Tunnel premiered the same year as Star Trek, following the adventures of 2 scientists lost in time.
Tell them who I am.
Youthful hothead Tony Newman
We're on an expedition to Mars.
and more mature scientist Doug Phillips, as they bounce from time zone to time zone, while the team back at the Time Tunnel try to bring them home.
Wherever he and Doug are now, at least they're together.
But where?
This press release from June 1966 highlights that the time travelers were not necessarily going to be involved in momentous historical events, but were going to be caught in the shadows of history. Key happenings in the shadows of historical events, not the events themselves. The series mostly stayed close to that concept, but what aired was not exactly what was originally conceived. Initially, leading elder scientist Tony Newman and younger scientist Peter Phillips work at the Institute for Advanced Research in the Theoretical Sciences in Silvermine, Connecticut, where they have invented a time machine. Now, the initial design went through a number of different versions. This is our favorite. But there were some problems with it, natch. There were also problems with the concept. For one, there were only 2 characters, and Peter Phillips was going to be lost in time alone. So the main characters were going to be stuck in different time zones and never interact face to face. Yeah, needed work. So Irwin called in his favorite writer. By the time Shyman Wenzelberg delivered his first draft of the teleplay, named The Man Who Killed Time, there were added characters, such as Dr. Lothar Kirk, head of the Institute, who became General Haywood Kirk, military head of the project in the series.
You know, he looked as though he might have been a time traveler from the future.
And yes, in September 1966, America was introduced to a Captain Kirk and a General Kirk. No relation. Later drafts changed the setup to a government-funded and more pithy Project TikTok, described as a domed city in the desert. Wenzelberg also added the story's time zone, the sinking of the Titanic. But it would take yet another draft to toss Tony into the tunnel with Peter and make it a temporal duo. Then Pete Phillips became Doug Phillips. And after James Darren was hired, Tony and Doug switched roles and relative ages.
Scrap.
Tony, the Senator feels our experiments haven't shown enough success to warrant the time and money invested.
I suppose Irwin thought Darren looked more like a Tony than a Doug. And the rest is history.
This is the incredible time tunnel in the weeks to come.
The Time Tunnel made a total of 1 season of 30 episodes that are still being watched today.
I am your son.
But the staff did, briefly, believe they had a second season. Irwin had already prepared the pitch book, and it is impressive. 34 stories are thumbnailed out, but the direction is very clear. Season 1 had 6 sci-fi focused stories.
Find them, kill them.
We are here to destroy you.
Find them, kill them.
Of the 34 proposals of Season 2, 18 are high-concept sci-fi stories, like The Human Magnets, Plunge to the End of Time, The Return of the Ice Age, and 2 different versions of Lost Civilization. Irwin reused everything, including titles. A complete list of the second season episode proposals can be found in the excellent work, The Time Tunnel, A History of the Television Program by Martin Graham. I highly recommend it. Now, like Irwin, Time Tunnel is my personal favorite of his TV series. I once asked Bob Colbert if he ever wished Time Tunnel had gone on to 5 seasons. His response was, every damn day. Now on to props, sort of. Now here's something the gallery picked up, which I think is really interesting. It's not super exciting, but it's a neat item. And it's James Darren's leather script cover that Irwin Allen gave him when they began production on the series. And inside, I mean, it's got James Darren's name on it, and James Darren put the stickers of a couple of the Irwin Allen shows that he had worked on. It has a little page holder there, and it also has a phone list of everybody on the crew of the Time Tunnel, like 200 and some, and all their phone numbers. And I haven't tried any, but Irwin didn't stop coming up with wild ideas. Hoping to ride the Batman train, Irwin next developed The Spirit for television, Will Eisner's classic comic book crime fighter. Surprisingly, it didn't sell. Next, Irwin was inspired by A Nightmare, but it too underwent massive changes before it went to air. Land of the Giants was the last of the 4 sci-fi series Irwin brought to the small screen. Finally premiering in 1968, it had had a long gestation.
Everyone strap in. We're taking off.
Giants was the tale of 7 castaways, a kind of cross between Gilligan's Island and Lost in Space, who were trapped on a planet very much like Earth, but 12 times normal size, with all the accompanying dangers. This is writer William Welch's personal copy of In the Beginning. It's the original pilot for Land of the Giants, and is very, very different than what finally aired. Initially, there were only 2 astronauts from Earth, military stereotype Major Steve Warren and scientist stereotype Dr. Alex Bryant. They enter the Land of the Giants in much the usual way, through a glowing green space warp. then run into two giant children and finally crash in the forest. It's here our two space travelers meet a normal-sized young woman in noticeably medieval clothes named Tice, who's just trying to get through her day. They rescue her, then are captured by her Robin Hood-like people who don't trust Steve and Alex because they wear similar clothes to the giants. Suddenly, we are introduced to the giant leaders in council, all stirred up because a spaceship of high-technology little people was seen by two boys, and gosh darn it, they must be invading aliens. The rest of the story is pretty close to the aired pilot, but the giant scientists are doing experiments on Tice, and it takes the whole band of merry men to effect a rescue. The little people were also very little, like 2 inches instead of 6. Building usable-sized props nixed that idea. With the entire concept revamped, a short pilot film was made to sell the idea to ABC affiliates.
1967, the year of the giants. The newest concept in incredible entertainment.
Now here's a treat. This is an original pre-production painting of the interior of the Spindrift that was used in the short presentation film. I love this piece. It's so retro-futuristic and even smacks a bit of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The round interior design obviously reflects the use of the Jupiter 2 stock footage from Lost in Space that Irwin incorporated into the presentation film. And the salad bowl on Betty Hamilton's head? Yeah, that looks familiar.
You pretty, like girl.
Oh, how nice.
There were more changes, mostly names, but this was very close to what aired.
Trapped in the giant laboratory.
This is my favorite part.
The attack of the giant goldfish.
It's actually a holdover from William Welch's original pilot script.
Well, that's it. The story of the first episode of Irwin Allen's new series for the American Broadcasting Company, Land of the Giants. See what I mean?
After Lost in Space was a hit, Irwin got a deal with CBS to develop 3 more series.
We are 500 years ahead of you.
But that's a story for next time, as we continue our exploration of the lost legacy of Irwin Allen.
Which we have no intention of duplicating.